Hello everybody, how's it going today? It's Frankie here and I'm back yet with another movie review. Yeah, all of you get the picture by now. And I'm not sure how to feel about this movie either. I mean, it wasn't that bad. I wouldn't say it was decent, but it was another average movie. But to be honest, I had a bit of hope and promise to it. It's called Weirdsville. I thought I heard of a name like this before, but maybe I've heard it in like other movies where they mention something like that. I don't think it was an actual movie. So it's about these pair of drug dealers that, I won't say drug dealers, but they're pair of suckers, you could say, that is like that does drug dealing or something like that, does drugs. And they they have to bury a body of a dead girlfriend behind where they a theater, in like a theater where there's like a group of people doing satanic rituals. No, I mean, it didn't feel that much accurate in watching the movie. I expect it to be slightly different. I'll go through it quickly, briefly. I'll break it down. I'm gonna cut the boring bits. It starts off in like a juxtaposition where it shows like, I think, Royce breaking like this window of a gnome or something like that. And yeah, he's probably the funniest character in the movie. So he had a bit more to him in terms of comedic sense. His friend Dexter is the other one of is his friend, and he's also part of it too. Not as much. You don't actually see that scene when they do show that scene as like afterwards into the movie. I think it also shows someone called Omar, who's like the boss of it all, that says he hires Dex and he wants his money back, and then it just cuts off from there. Not really much happens, and then it just cuts to Dexter finding Matilda on like some sort of like, what was it? Something else like a hammock, and he tells Royce what happened. And Royce is just drugged up too much, and the money that Omar gave them, it was just all, she wasted most of it, and they decided to try and bury her body. This is the part where I thought was going to be funny, probably not as much. And then they sort of go to a cinema, and they they try and bury her and stuff like that, and you see the Satanist coming, as you could call it that. And then there's a funny scene there which made me laugh a little bit, where I forget what's his name, where Todd goes, where was it? No, Abel goes to Todd. Oh, you're not dressed up for the occasion? And Todd goes, well, you said dress up my old man. That actually, I would like that. I like that sort of scene, because the signs at the end there, it kind of made me laugh. And Todd, with how he is, he actually was kind of funny in that scene right there. He could have been funny if the part of the story wasn't him getting sacrificed. And then you had that Seamus, and I don't know this other woman's name. I don't see this woman in the cast list. Maybe I have, I just didn't notice. I don't know, but I'm not going to mention much in this one. And then they see and they find out that there's a sacrifice going on, Dexter and Royce, and then they get they get taken hostage, and then they sacrifice Matilda's body, and then the blood sort of makes her alive, which I didn't get, because part of the story on this is for them to hide the body, and I thought they were going to be hiding it and avoiding it or see what's going on. I didn't think the movie was going to pan out like that, so it didn't make much sense how she was all of a sudden just resuscitated by this, as you want to use that word. And yeah, there's a bit of like a type of a scrap between Matilda and this woman, and yeah, they do escape eventually. Yeah, so they escape, and these Satanists want to go after them, and they find that their address, and they find they're not there. It's just I don't know what to make of this movie so far. I'm gonna try my best to remember these scenes too. There's not really much scenes of Omar and his partners involved in it. They did eventually find Dexter and Royce, and they hurt them a bit, for the money that they owe them. And then you see how Dexter and Royce go to like sort of like this house, you could say, and this scene's kind of okayish, like funny-ish. And they go and had because they want a safe from that house, because they heard of a story of like, I think, Gary's brother, who they bump into eventually. No, Gary's uncle, but they bump into Gary inside the house. And there's a story about the uncle that robbed the bank, and something that he slipped and phoned and cracked his head or whatever it was. It said that's how he died. And then they go ahead and just look at the safe. And then the guy said, "Oh, I know the combination." There was a scene where Royce takes a gnome that he used to break into the house with, and hit Gary on the head, and he just makes him unconscious, and then breaks lock and the safe's inside. And then Dexter goes, "Do you know the combination?" Is like, "Yeah. I've written it down though. That's a problem." Okay, well, have you memorized it? Well, no, I haven't. No. that made me laugh. And he says, "When the piece of paper that he left behind at his place where the Satanists are, and they find it." Well, that's fun. That scene is funny. I can't hate on that scene. And then they carry the safe, and then the safe drops into a hole in the ground, and yeah, so they sort of have to carry it and put it in their car. Yeah, that's kind of funny. And then they kind of scare Gary by wearing masks so he doesn't recognize them. He's like, "Oh my god, what?" And the guy's like, "What we do? Just take anything. Just shut up, man. Where's the key for the basement?" The guy was like, it's in the drawer. It's in the drawer. But just, I'm not into that. I'm not into dudes, man." And those two guys are like, "Oh, what? No, what's going on? Just you can use a rubber, man. Please, I don't want anything like that. Please, don't have these." I was like, "No, we're not into freaky stuff. What's wrong with you? Just tell us where the key is. We're not into that." That made me laugh. I give him that. That's the sort of comedic scenes I like right there. And they go down there, they find out some stuff in the drawers, like, "Oh damn, this is the naughty stuff here, man. What's going on?" And they give the guy some weed, so he doesn't really remember much. And then they sort of escape. They go to like a mall. And bear in mind, some of these scenes may not be in exact order, but I'm just giving out the best bits of the movie. And they come to this mall, and I've got to be careful what word I use, because I'm pretty sure I used this type of word on like my first channel, my Opinions of Perspective channel. I was playing that hard time game, and they come across this officer, this like tiny guy officer. I'm not going to mention the word. I'm not sure how YouTube would take it. I didn't mention. I don't know how that video stayed up that way. And then the guy, I think the guy's name is Martin, if I remember correctly, if I saw in the picture there. So Martin says, "What are you doing here? You should be breaking in." And they just tell him a story about the escape from Satanists. Yeah, real life you wouldn't tell him that sort of story. And then he sort of like helps them to escape through a door, but he starts their IDs to keep them, and he sees Seamus breaking in. He sees them breaking in, and no, I think it was Seamus. Yeah, I think it was either Seamus or the not Todd guy, Seamus and Abel that came came with the woman, and they were belittling him, and then they sort of like have him, and they sort of like put him in the water in the pool to try and drown him to death, but it didn't succeed. And then he sort of calls up someone called Anthony. It's pronounced Anthony, I say Anthony, and he says, "We got cold blue," and you see like Martin has these like partners or whatever you call it. It's almost like they're just like the warriors or something. That's kind of cool. And then they sort of attack these people that tried to that broke into the mall. It gets a bit chaotic. And then after a while, Dexter and Royce, is on the is trying to get help, and they come across this woman who's called Irene, and Irene is more like, she's the one that lives at the house that they broke into. You could say mansion, but where they stole the safe from. And they'd be like, "Oh, okay." She told us a story of the guy that hit his head or something like that. Point is, an icicle that fun. I don't know how an icicle could get stuck in a guy's head and he still walks. Yeah, you could tell comedy's unrealistic. And he got to the house eventually, and yeah, the woman just helps him out. They leave, and then they eventually I think they eventually escape, and then they do come across the Satanist eventually, because the Satanist kidnaps Matilda, and they also kidnap the Gary dude from that place as well. And I don't think the woman knows that he's been taken. So they then get into a car, and then they Martin and his, you know, friends do come into contact with them in the car, and they start trying to attack them in the car, and they start smash up the car, ruining it. And eventually you see Matilda and Gary escaping into this like club. I think Alma and his friends are hanging out actually where his partners are. And then Abel and that woman just sort of like leaves the scene. With Seamus hanging out where Dex and Royce lives because, excuse me, just in case they come back. And then they so Dex and Royce just come back to their place, go into the you know, the house, and they see the dude. They go into their place, and they start, the dude sort of gives away where they are. They actually made him a bit high too. And eventually they do get Matilda. They do rescue Matilda, and then they sort of have an interaction with her. And I think Royce says something that's a bit over the top. She never said, and then Matilda sort of leaves, and then I think Royce goes after her, and then Dexter goes after them. And then he sees that the Satans have caught them. Dexter did say to make a phone call though. He did eventually, you know, they were knocked out, and he made a phone call to Satan saying, "Oh my, I got your money. Just come to this location now." The location where the Satans are, where they held the Matilda hostage, with this that old dude. I'm not sure this old dude. I think this old dude is like the uncle. So I can't really remember. I think so. And yeah, so they eventually all meet up. And yeah, so, and then I think and the guy almost shoots. The gas canister sort of like gets hit, and the smoke comes out. So yeah, bad news for that, because if anyone, you know, has a light and they light, you know, try to light a match or explode, which what happens towards the end there. But yeah, so basically these Martin, his friends, when he's in a car, they were sort of like drinking and driving, and then they crashed into like, you know, the car that Dex and Royce was driving, and the safe just pops out and lands on them Abel's back. And all the money comes out, and Alma says, is this your money that you owe me? And then Dexter just sort of looks at the old dude, which I assume is Gary's uncle, which I assume so, because he looked over the money, because that's the safe they stole the pace out from. You know, when they went to that house, they saw the safe from there. And the guy said, "Oh, whatever, you can have it then, cool." Something like that anyway. And Dexter said yes. So yeah, and as soon as Alma was that and as soon as that Dexter and Royce left, Alma lit a match, and the whole place just exploded. That's but then the old dude survived for some reason. I don't know. We know how he survived. And you see how Dexter and Royce is there talking about paying back something. I don't know, because there's the money they stole. Matilda just comes out, and that was the end right there. I did quite well describing that. I'm not good at describing movies. There's a lot of good bits in that movie. So I thought I was going to explain this movie quite short. You can watch it for yourself so you know what I'm talking about. I don't want to go too much into detail. I don't know how to feel. At the start of it, I was like, this movie's kind of a bit silly. I don't know how to feel about it. I don't think there's anything going to be funny coming out of this. But at the same time, it actually got really interesting from at least 35 minutes, 40 minutes onwards. It actually got really interesting. And actually got a bit funny here and there, some scenes. I kind of enjoyed it a little bit. I wouldn't say it's a decent movie as such. I mean, it's not a good movie. It needed more. And as I keep saying, I'm not going to get a comment saying, what do you mean by it needed more? When you have a comedy movie, practically nearly every scene needs to have comedy. Don't just put comedy when you have not much comedy in it. That makes no sense. You might as well just scrap that and just have it as a straight up drama, because there's no point keeping it as comedy. There's a few funny scenes, which makes it a bit average to say the least. Acting was actually not too bad. Acting for this movie is perfect, especially for comedy. They needed to deliver the humour a bit more better. They need to present it a bit more better, because I felt there was more to it. I felt this movie had a lot of hope, and it just didn't deliver properly as it should have. But the rating I'm going to give it, the director and producer shouldn't be disheartened by it, because I think there was some promise of this movie. It's just I didn't like the way that the characters kind of had their dialogue as if it's like made it sound a bit silly. I don't like it when something's meant to look funny when it isn't. That's what it felt like. Royce for me was the perfect character for this movie. Dexter just felt like he was just there as a partner, basically, you could say. I mean, that's the whole point, that there's two of them instead of a pair of stackers in the movie that is in this sort of situation. But I don't know. I don't know how to feel. I just think this movie, for me, it had potential. But again, it's just needs more. Just like I said, every other movie needed more. But at least it's kind of better than the movies I gave 1 out of 10 for. Bear that in mind. And the title is called Weirdsville. I've seen movies that are worse than this, that are more weird. I didn't see many scenes that are weird in this. I don't know why they call it Weirdsville. Usually titles have to have a sense of relevance to it. I didn't find the movie weird. I find there's like a regular comedy type movie. A mild comedy, I'm going to call it. Not much humour there, but it's mild. So they could have had a lot more. It would have been the funniest movie ever if they had way more humour into it. More comedy. But again, producers probably made it thinking, okay, all these scenes are funny practically. I only laughed at what, 2-3 scenes? Not good enough. Average at best. Not really much else to say, is there? Setting for this, not too bad. I mean, there's not much else that you can say about the setting. I want to talk about the camera crafted because the camera where it should be, like how it should be in movies like that anyway. Yeah, would have been cool if they actually had a plot to it where they were trying to hide the body and they were hiding a lot, and they were trying to figure out what the hell is going on. They tried to, hide, or they tried to figure out a way to escape or whatever. I didn't expect there to be a cat and mouse in this movie. I really didn't. And the description misled me so much. They could have made it. They could have said, okay, they're planning to bury a dead body of a girlfriend into like a theatre, but then things spiral out of control when a group of Satanists come after them as a game of cat and mouse. That would have been more ideal. That description sounded funny enough, but then it didn't turn out like I thought it would turn out. So yeah, something like that anyway. I feel like my version, don't know what much they could have done about it. I feel like my version makes more sense than what they made out into the movie. But yeah, rating. Oh, it's one of the 2 average scores. I'm feeling generous about this movie. I think there was more to it, but they could have added more. I only have one or two numbers in my head, 5 or 6. I don't do decimals. I do whole numbers. Well, it's only got me one I'm sticking to my head for right now, and that's a 6. It's not higher and it's not lower. It could be a 5. But I'm going with 6 because it's a bit generous, and then my mind's telling me go with 6. So yeah, like I said, the improvement should be more comedy. I feel like if I had 1 or 2 more funny scenes, it would have been decent, but it didn't make me laugh to death. I need something that can make me laugh to death so that it makes it feel humorous. So yeah, not much else to explain, is that? I mean, a lot of other things were right. I like the setting, I like the kind of the storyline to it, how it went in the movie. It got quite a bit interesting, a bit okayish after that. But yeah, like I said, acting good. Can't learn that one. I can't really criticise them. But yeah, there's not really much else to say about the movie. I mean, the end part, pretty like regular for any sort of movie like that. But yeah, there's not much else to say in this movie. 6 out of 10 it is. If you enjoyed the video, please give a like, comment, share what you know, subscribe and hit the notification below. So see you in my next video.